Well, it's Monday morning here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico, and it's time to have a look back over the weekend of International Rugby and have a talk about some of the things that happened. So in this video I'm going to go through the scores of some of the main games that I watched in the weekend. We're going to have a look at who the player of the weekend in my opinion was out of a few nominees, so make sure you stick around for that. And if there was any questions that came in from you, I'm going to answer them too in this video. So let's get into the show. G'day everyone, welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. If you haven't been here before, my name's Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan who's living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. And every Monday now I've decided I'm going to look back over the weekend of International Rugby and give you my thoughts and opinions as well as the results that happened over the weekend. So let's get into the games that I had a look at, and I'll talk a little bit about those. So the first one up was Scotland versus Samoa, played in Eden Park in New Zealand. So both teams got an opportunity to walk out and play on the great famous Eden Park in Auckland. Now Scotland's been bouncing around the South Pacific over the last couple of weeks. They lost last week against Fiji. They had a good win against the Maori All Blacks the week before, and this weekend they had a good win against Samoa. Samoa didn't score until late in the game and made the scoreboard a little bit more respectable. I've liked what I've seen from the Scottish team. I think they've got some really good players. Horn's been playing well on this tour. I've also seen some good stuff from Redpath as well. And they've got a little bit of pace out wide too, haven't they, in terms of the wingers. Unfortunately for Samoa, underperforming again. I'm a little bit disappointed in the Pacific Island teams just not being able to go up to the next level in their evolution. And we all know it comes down to money and resources and all those sorts of things, but there's no doubt about it that the athletic talent of the players in the Pacific Islands has been as good as it's always been. It just needs some really good coaching to get in there, some investment to get behind it, and I'm sure we'll start seeing these teams in the top 10 of world rugby, there's no doubt about it. But a good tour for Scotland. I thought they did well. A little bit disappointed that they didn't get a chance to play the Wallabies. I would have liked to seen a Scotland versus Wallabies warm-up game for helping the Wallabies as they prepared for the British and Irish test matches. That didn't happen though. I think that was an opportunity missed. But I think Gregor Townsend's seen enough of the younger players that he took on this tour, and I think Scotland are going to be better for it when they get back to the Northern Hemisphere and take on the rest of their season at the end of the year. Now next up was a game between an Argentinian 15 taking on Romania in Argentina. Interesting development opportunity again for Argentina, which is fantastic. We know the trouble they have in terms of no domestic league in Argentina and their players having to travel extraordinary miles to get games and to get opportunities. Romania were coming off a loss last weekend against Uruguay, quite a dramatic loss indeed. So were they going to be able to stick it with this Argentinian 15? Well, their short answer was no. They weren't able to, and Argentina once again showed that they've got some good development players coming through. The final score in this game was 52 points to 14 in favour of the Argentinian 15. So for Romania, what do they do from here? Well, like many places, more investment needs to go into the country in terms of grassroots rugby, getting the development coming through. Otherwise, we're going to see these kinds of countries like Romania just stagnating in the position that they're in. You know, I'd like to see teams like Romania travelling the world and having opportunities to play several matches against good teams. Why don't they go to New Zealand at some stage during the year and play against the Crusaders, the Chiefs, the Highlanders, and the rest of the Super Rugby teams in New Zealand? I think that would be a good thing for the Romanian development opportunity, and also give the New Zealanders a different look at playing different types of rugby styles. Just an idea. What do you think of that one? Next up in the results for the weekend was Canada against Spain. This was always going to be an exciting game. For me, Canada haven't kicked on with their ability and shown what they are doing in terms of their investment in the game in the country. Knowing a little bit about the structure of Canadian rugby, there's a little bit over the place. Of course, they've got a huge geographical area to cover, and they've got a short window each year in which they're able to play their games. So that's some of the restraints that are put on this Canadian team. However, Spain, on the other hand, are one of those teams in world rugby that I think are getting better and better, and I think we're going to start to see them climb up the world rankings a little bit more. This was a good win by Spain over Canada, and it just showed that the continued effort in investing in Spanish rugby and untapping some of the good players that they've got is starting to pay off. The final score in this game was Spain 24, Canada 23, but it just showed to me that in these tight games, Spain have got the mettle to be able to get over the top of these teams. That's 2 good wins in a row now from Spain over the last couple of weekends. Let's see whether they can keep this momentum going. Well done to all the fans of Spanish rugby. Next up on my list of games that I watched over the weekend, it was New Zealand versus France at Hamilton in New Zealand, the 3rd test match in that series. And boy, some of you took to my assessment of that game and shared me your opinions in no uncertain terms, but I'm going to stick with what I said. I think the New Zealanders got some real gaps in this team. The midfield looks a mess at the moment. Where are all the great wingers from New Zealand rugby of days gone past? We don't seem to be able to have good wingers anymore, and because of all the injuries that we had leading up to this game, it was a little bit of a disjointed effort for me. I think the Kiwis are still a long way off the pace and where they need to be up there with the best in the world. So the All Blacks will go to Argentina next to start their rugby championship campaign. 2 games in Argentina. It's going to be very interesting to see what Razor Robertson does when he names his squad on August the 4th to go over to Argentina. Are those players who are injured, are they going to be included to travel? Because don't forget, when they come back from there, they're going to be taking on the mighty Springboks in 2 games in New Zealand. So the selection of that team in Argentina is going to be very, very interesting. And are we going to be able to see the All Blacks hit good form for 80 minutes in a game? That's the question that came out of that series against France for me. What about France? Well, they scored 2 more points in that last game than they did in the 2nd test match, and their development squad did themselves no harm at all, I thought, while they're on tour in New Zealand. I think Fabien Gaultier would have been happy with some of the players that stepped up and took their opportunity. Aradou was one for me in the forwards. I really like him. I think he's got a big future in front of him. So has the big number 8, Gillard. I think he was good. And we saw really good performances from Nolan Ligarac. He's not any Anton Dupont, but he's starting to get more and more experience in that position. I think number 10 needs to be an issue for France to look at. I think they need to have more control in their backline, but it's hard to say from this particular squad that they took to New Zealand what we're going to see at the end of the year in their bigger games. I thought Barry at fullback was disappointing for the French. He made a number of errors in the games that I saw him play, and they're going to have to look at what they do with him going forward. But in the end, it was a good series. I thought it gave each team what they were looking for. The All Blacks weren't able to hit top gear for 80 minutes in either game. Questions over the impact of the bench in some of them as well. And as I said, some big holes in the midfield selections, and also the number 10 jersey hasn't been sorted out, in my opinion. Now after that one, it was time to go over to the Mombala Stadium in Nelspruit in South Africa to watch the Springboks play against Georgia. A convincing win on the scoreboard in the end, but after reading a lot of your comments, I will agree with you. I think the Springboks have got a lot of things to work on around the maul and breakdown area. They were shown up a little bit by Georgia in the weekend, and also Italy in the previous test matches, so I think that's one area that Rassie's going to be looking at. But overall, I thought to see their expansive game come together was very, very exciting. I think there were standout performances from Grant Williams in particular. Also Kanan Moody was exceptional, I thought, in the weekend, and Edwill van der Verve had a great game on the wing, scoring 2 tries. The Georgians, though, they played their part in this game, and for the first 20 minutes or so they were very physical. Their intent was strong, and I'll tell you what, I saw some of the Springboks forwards taking some big, deep, heavy breaths in that first half, getting their wind back, because the Georgians were playing very, very physical rugby. So what now for the Springboks? Well, they'll get ready for Australia, and I'm sure that Rassie's going to be looking at his selection criteria, because he's going to have that team that goes to New Zealand to play those 2 test matches. So I'm sure there's going to be some balancing of the squad. I asked a lot of you what you thought in terms of the 10 position, and it seems to me that Pollard and Mane Lebok are getting the nod from most of you, although some of you think that Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu are still going to get the opportunities from Rassie in the Rugby Championship competition in some games, and I think you'll both be right on that case. But what I got out of that weekend was the replacements that came on were very good for the Springboks. We saw a lot of impact, particularly from the likes of R.G. Schneemann. I thought he did well. Pollard, of course, when he came on. and we saw good play also from the front row that went on the field in the beginning of the game, all debutants. And the standout for me was Manus van der Verve. Thought he had a great game. Scored 2 tries on debut. Not too sure how many front rowers do that in their debut game. Good performance from the Springboks. A few things to critique, I think, and get ready for Australia, but they're on track to do very well in the Rugby Championship competition. Next up was Argentina versus Uruguay, and don't forget I said before an Argentinian 15. Well, this was the main Pumas team who took on Uruguay, and interestingly enough they scored exactly the same amount of points as the Argentinian 15 team did, 52 points. I was interested in this game because Uruguay did very well last week to dispose of Romania by 70 points. I thought they were going to give Argentina a hard time in this game, and they did for a little while. It was quite close and they were quite competitive. But again, the class from Argentina came through in the end, and particularly in the second half, they started to run away with this game. The final score was 52-17 in favour of Los Pumas, and that would have been a good win for them to get their mojo together, prepare now for the Rugby Championship, where they're going to take on the All Blacks first up with 2 games at home in Argentina. That's going to be a cracking series. I think Felipe Contepomi still has quite a bit of work to get this team ready to play against the All Blacks and have a good successful series there. They were a little bit disappointing against England at times, I thought, the Pumas. So we want to see that real spark that they've got come back into their game. And Thomas Albanos is going to have to be one of the key players for them, I think, for them to get to that level. But a comfortable win over Uruguay for Los Pumas this weekend. Well, I just spoke about England. Well, they were off to the United States this weekend to play against the US national team, and everybody thought, well, England's going to win this one easily, and they did in the end. I think the most exciting aspect of this game while watching it for me was the commentary team from the United States. Some of the vocabulary they use around describing rugby and not really understanding the little technical areas of rugby was absolutely fantastic, because their passion and their excitement for the game was unrivaled, and I really enjoyed it. And I think this is great for the world of rugby as more and more people in the United States get attracted to the game and we start to see the performances of their national team get better. I think as we head towards 2031 and the Rugby World Cup in the US, just up the road there a little bit, I think it's going to be fantastic for the game across the world. It was a good performance by the US, but they were outshadowed by the England team. 40 points to 5 was the final score in this one. George Ford playing well yet again, and I think he's had a really good tour this season for the English team. So next up was the World Rugby Under-20 Championship final between the South African Junior Springboks and the New Zealand team, and boy, what a game it was. And South Africa once again getting it over top of a New Zealand rugby team. It was an interesting final. The New Zealanders went down to 13 men at one stage after getting a red card and a couple of yellows there. South Africans getting a yellow as well. The final score was 23-15 to the Junior Springboks. They were deserved of the win. They've got some good players in that team, and they've got a guy called Albie Bester who's like a mini version of Damon Diolandi in the 12 jersey. I can't wait to see what happens with this guy as he gets a little bit older. That was fantastic. But I tell you what, some of those forwards were looking like giants already at the age of under 20, and there's no doubt about it that the depth in Springbok rugby across all ages is absolutely phenomenal. They're world champions now at under 18, under 20, and also in the men's 15 game. So it just shows the depth of Springboks rugby. The New Zealanders weren't too far away from this, but they just got out-competed in different areas of the game, and they'll go away much better for it. But discipline was one of the things that let them down in this game, that's for sure. Okay, so the next game I watched was the British and Irish Lions against the Wallabies. If you haven't seen my deep dive on this game, go and watch that now. It's right here. But in the end, we saw the British and Irish Lions winning by 27 points to 19. An 8-point victory there against a team that only played one warm-up game versus their 5 warm-up games. A lot of you have said in the comments that you expect the Lions to be better in the second test. I expect the Wallabies to be better in the second test. So therefore, that's going to make it even more interesting. There were some standout performers from the Lions. I thought Finn Russell had a fantastic game. Add to Gibson Park as well, absolutely controlling it from 9 and 10 for the first 50 minutes of the game. Tom Curry and Ty Byrne were the standout forwards, I thought, from the British and Irish Lions. And on the Aussie side, well, when we saw Tate McDermott come on, Ben Donaldson made a difference, and when Tom Wright, Ike Tau and Sua Ali started running in that second half, we saw the dangerous things the Wallabies can put together. Max Jorgensen scored a good try, showing his ability once again on the wing, and Harry Potter did some good stuff. Harry Wilson was a good leader of the Wallabies, I thought, in this game. He's a good captain and a good young player. Much more to come, but I think it was the players the Wallabies were missing. The Lolosios in this game, also Rob Valentini and Will Skelton. Some big boys there that I think could have taken on the Lions a little bit more up front and made a difference. But the first test match of the Lions series in Australia has gone to the British and Irish Lions. We wait now for the next game coming up this weekend in Melbourne at the beautiful Melbourne Cricket Ground. That's going to be a cracker. So there we go, there's a wrap of the games that I watched over the weekend. I think the most enjoyable for me was watching the Springboks against Georgia and the tries that were being run in there. That was a very good game, and that under 20 game was also an entertaining game to watch as far as the quality of the rugby goes. Now, okay folks, time for my player of the weekend, and what I've decided to do each week now is to nominate a few players and then choose from them. So the nominations for this week, first of all, is Ty Byrne for the British and Irish Lions in their game against the Wallabies. I thought he had an outstanding game. He was good in the set piece, but it was tackle count and his ability to get around the field that really set Ty Byrne apart in this game, and I was particularly taking notice in him throughout the whole game, and he just played an absolutely spectacular game. So he's one of the nominees for player of the week for me this week. The second one is Grant Williams from the Springboks. I think he's getting better game by game. He showed how quick and elusive he is from the base of the scrum, the maul, and also the breakdowns, and he has that ability to be able to get through a gap himself, and his passing and distribution was spot on, as well as some really good box kicks. So I think Grant Williams had a really good game this weekend as well. The next one on my list for nominees is going to be Manus van der Verve. He had a great game for the Boks. Of course, it was his debut. He scored 2 tries in that game, but he was a brute force in the front row, really showed his ability, and I think Rassie would have been really happy with his performance on debut for the Springboks. And then the last player on my list for nominees for player of the week this week is going to be Nolan Ligarac from France. Yes, he played in a losing team against the All Blacks this weekend, but Ligarac scored all of France's 19 points in this game. He scored a great try with awareness around the base of a line-out drive, got over, and his kicking was on point for the French in this game. So any player that scores all his team points in a losing side at least gets a nominee from my point of view. Nolan Ligarac for France is my final nominee in this week's Player of the Week. Now I know a lot of you are going to be shouting that the backs get too much of the spotlight, so my Player of the Week this week is going to be Manus van der Verve from South Africa. I think scoring 2 tries on debut is something he'll never forget in his career, but he also had a really good game. In addition to scoring those 2 tries, he was big and powerful in the front row, and coming on with the nerves and excitement of your first game and being Johnny on the spot to get those 2 tries was a great performance. And I think the Springboks have uncovered another brilliant player for their front row. So for this week, my Player of the Week goes to a forward, and it's Manus van der Verve from South Africa. Okay, each week I'm going to ask you to send in your questions of me, anything that you want to ask me about rugby across the world, and I'll answer them here on this Monday show. Okay, so I didn't actually get a question about this, but I did get a post about it, and it was about the game between Zimbabwe and Namibia that was played at the Uganda Stadium in the weekend. And it was a very good game. I have seen the highlights of it, but the important thing here is that Zimbabwe have now qualified for the Rugby World Cup in 2027, something they haven't done since 1991. So this is an historic occasion for the Zimbabwe rugby team, and what makes it even more astonishing is that most of these players are semi-professional or amateurs in that particular team. So congratulations to everybody associated with the Zimbabwe rugby outfit. That was a fantastic achievement to get into the Rugby World Cup in 2027, and who knows, I might even get to see you all down there in Australia at that particular competition. Well done, Zimbabwe. So there we go, everyone. That's the review of the weekend, my nominated player of the weekend as well. Let me know who your standout players were this weekend. Who would have got your tip of the hat for player of the week? I'd love to hear. And was there any team that stood out for you in the weekend in terms of their overall rugby performance? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. There was some really fantastic rugby played across the weekend, from the under-20s of course up to the men's senior teams in different parts of the world, and may that continue to be the case as our beautiful game continues to grow across the world. So that's it for this Monday show, everyone. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button now. Give this video a bit of a thumbs up, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter, X. I'll put the link to my site in the description of this particular video. I'll be back again soon with some more content, much to talk about from all the teams and the way they're playing at the moment, and some of the player gaps they have in their respective teams. So I'm going to drop a few videos about that during the week. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, keep enjoying your rugby across the world, and it's time to say adios from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Bye for now.